and welcome back to Haunted Echo. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy haunting echoes that linger in the darkness, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1, I think I still have enough time to write this down. Things have gone quiet for now, or at least quieter than they were before. I have my desk chair wedged under the office door handle, and I pushed a filing cabinet in front of it too. I do not know if that will help for more than a few seconds, but right now a few seconds might be the only thing keeping me alive. There's tapping at the window. That should not be possible. I am on the second floor of my house, and when I moved in, there were no trees outside this window. There was nothing close enough to touch the glass. No branches, no vines, nothing but open air, a strip of yard below, and the neighbor's fence beyond that. But something is tapping out there now, softly, patiently, like fingernails testing the glass. I need to find a way out of here, but before I do, this message needs to get out. Maybe it will save someone else from making the same stupid mistakes I made. Maybe it will at least explain what happened if someone finds this house later and sees what is left of me inside. To understand how this started, I have to go back a few months. I had just moved into this rental house. It was not perfect, but it was better than my old place. More space, quieter street, a decent kitchen, and a fenced-in backyard that looked like it belonged to someone who had once cared about gardening. The yard was one of the main reasons I wanted the place. It was big, private, and already had raised beds along one side. There was a small stone path, a patch of grass, and a few sad shrubs that looked like they were waiting for someone to notice them again. The only problem was the landlord did not allow pets. That felt almost cruel with a yard like that. I had always wanted a dog, and this place seemed built for one. I asked anyway, hoping maybe the rule was flexible. No pets, the landlord said. I've been burned before, he did not explain what that meant. He just crossed his arms and looked at me like I had already disappointed him. What if I kept up the garden? I asked. Would that change anything? About the dog? No. What about rent? That made him pause. He looked out at the yard for a long moment. His expression said he did not believe I knew the difference between a weed and a vegetable. He sighed like he was doing me a favor he already regretted. Spring and summer only, he said. That is when the yard needs work. If it starts looking like hell, the discount goes away. Yes, sir, I said quickly. Tools are in the basement. That should have been the end of it. Discounted rent in exchange for some yard work. No dog, no problem. But I still had this empty feeling I was trying to fill. I wanted something alive in the house. Something to care for. Something that needed me, even in a small way. That was how I got into bonsai. I had never really thought about bonsai before. To me, they had always been tiny trees people kept in fancy pots. Something old men shaped in peaceful gardens. But once the idea got in my head, I went all in. I watched videos for hours. I read forums. I learned about wiring trunks, pruning branches, exposing roots, repotting, soil mixes, and the way people could shape a tree over years until it looked like a small version of something ancient. That was the problem, though. Years. Bonsai is patient work. Most of it is waiting. You make a cut, shape a branch, adjust the wire, and then you wait for the tree to respond. You wait seasons, sometimes decades. People pass trees down to their children. Some of the most beautiful bonsai trees are older than the people caring for them. I respected that. I really did. I just did not have that kind of patience. I wanted the satisfaction of growing a tree from seed, but I also wanted to see results while I was still young enough to enjoy them. I knew that was not the right mindset. Every bonsai forum says the same thing. Do not rush the tree. Let it grow. Let it become what it is. But I kept searching anyway. One night, I decided to buy seeds. At first, I searched normal sites. The results were full of sponsored listings, fake bonsai seed kits, and overpriced packets meant for people who had no idea that bonsai is not a species of tree. I wanted something from a specialty vendor, something real. So I kept digging deeper and deeper through search results, past the clean websites and the obvious stores. Around page 9, I found a site. I cannot remember the name now. I have tried. It had something to do with accelerated seed stock. That phrase stuck with me because it sounded scientific and stupid at the same time. The page claimed the seeds could produce mature-looking bonsai in months. I should have closed the page right there. The website looked old. Not charming old. Forgotten old. The background was white. The pictures were grainy. The links were blue and underlined. There were no modern product pages, no social media links, no About Us page that made sense. Just rows of little photos and descriptions. I clicked one photo that looked like a Chinese elm, though there was no Latin name listed. That bothered me, but not enough to stop. The page had reviews, all 5 stars. The price was high, embarrassingly high. I do not even want to say how much I paid for 3 seeds. There was one detail I remember clearly from the return policy. Returns only accepted in original soil and original shipping container. I thought it was strange, but I laughed it off. Maybe it was some kind of branding gimmick. Maybe specialty plant people were just weird. I bought the packet of 3. I never got a confirmation email. The next morning, I went back to the site, or tried to. The listing was gone. Not sold out. Not moved. Gone, I searched for the phrase again and could not find it. I checked my browser history, but the page would not load properly anymore. It showed a blank white screen. I assumed I had been scammed. To be safe, I got a new debit card. I felt stupid for a few days, then mostly forgot about it. 2 weeks later, a box appeared on my doorstep. It was small, but heavy. The outer cardboard box did not seem to have a real postmark. No shipping label I recognized. No return address. Just my name and address printed on a label that looked slightly crooked. I should have cared. I did not. I was too excited. Inside the cardboard box was a wooden container closed with a small brass hasp. It looked too nice for seeds. The inside was lined with a strange grayish-blue metal that felt cold when I touched it. At the top was an instruction card, printed in clean block letters. It said the stock contained 3 germination units. It told me to use the enclosed dehydrated soil pump. It said to keep the seeds contained indoors, not to overwater, and to keep them in a well-ventilated location. The last instruction was the one I should have taken seriously. Do not allow root access beyond pot. At the time, I thought it just meant not to let the roots grow wild through drainage holes or into another container. Normal plant advice, but written in a dramatic way. Again, I thought it was branding. People will make anything sound special if it helps them charge more money. The seeds were larger than I expected. They were smooth, dark, and oddly heavy. When I held one in my palm, I noticed it was warm, not room temperature. Warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight. I planted one seed in a small pot with a soil puck and set it in the corner of my den near the floor vent. The instruction card had mentioned ventilation, and I figured the air moving from the vent would help. For the first week, nothing happened. I checked the pot every morning and every night. I misted the soil carefully. I kept telling myself not to overwater. After 7 days with no growth, I started thinking the whole thing had been a scam after all. Then one morning, I woke up and found a green stalk pushing up from the soil. I was thrilled. From there, the growth seemed normal at first, just fast. Too fast, maybe, but I did not want to question it. Within a few weeks, the little plant had become a young tree with a tiny trunk and several branches. It already looked ready to wire and shape. I kept checking my notes and comparing it to videos, amazed by how quickly it was responding. I wanted to leave a review, but I could not find the website again. Instead, I started posting pictures online. My friends were impressed. Strangers were less kind. Some people said I was lying about the age. Some said I had obviously bought it from a nursery and was pretending I had grown it from seed. One person said I had misidentified the species and that it was not what I thought it was at all. Those comments did not upset me. They made me proud. If people thought it looked too good to be true, that meant I had done something right. It meant the money had been worth it. Soon it was time for my first real pruning session. I sat in front of the tree for a long time, studying it from different angles. I had bought small, expensive pruners, the kind people in videos used. I wanted to make the first cuts carefully. Every branch mattered. Every choice would shape what the tree became. When I made the first cut, dark sap oozed from the wound. It was thicker than I expected, almost black in the low light. At the same moment, my mouth filled with a strange metallic taste, like I had licked a coin or swallowed my car keys. I froze. My first thought was that the tree might be diseased. Maybe I had done something wrong. Maybe the soil was bad or the seed stock was not healthy. I leaned closer and smelled the sap. It had a sharp, coppery smell that made the back of my throat tighten. I opened the pruners around a second branch. Before I could cut, another branch snapped across the back of my hand. It hit me hard enough to slice the skin like a deep paper cut. I jerked back and stared at the thin line of blood rising across my hand. For a second, I thought the tree had moved. Then I laughed at myself. Maybe I had bumped the pot. Maybe the branch had shifted under tension from the wire. Maybe the air conditioner had kicked on and moved it. There had to be a simple answer. I finished pruning, though I was more careful after that. The dark sap sealed the wounds by morning, and by the next day, new buds had already started growing from the pruned branches. That should have scared me. Instead, I was impressed. A few weeks later, the tree had grown enough that I decided to move it into a larger, nicer bonsai pot. I had bought one online, shallow and dark, with a small stone to help display the roots. Repotting would let me expose part of the root system and change to a better bonsai soil mix. I imagined pale roots wrapping over stone, the trunk curving upward, the leaves balanced. and full. When I lifted the original pot, it was much heavier than it should have been. I had to use both hands and more strength than I expected. Then the pot caught on something. I almost dropped it. I looked down and saw thick, pale roots growing through the drainage holes. They had gone into the air vent. My stomach tightened. I put the pot down and got on my knees. The roots had slipped between the metal grates and disappeared into the dark ductwork below. When I looked closer, I saw more of it. A whole network of pale roots snaked down into the vent. I did not want to hurt the tree. Bonsai roots can be delicate. Root work can stress a plant badly if you do it wrong. I tried to tug the roots free gently, but they would not move. They felt anchored, like they had found something down there and grabbed on. For a while, I considered leaving it alone. But I wanted the tree in the new pot. More than that, I could not have roots growing into the HVAC system. That was ridiculous. That was dangerous. That was the kind of thing that would get me charged by the landlord. So I cut them. The moment the pruners closed, the roots recoiled. I know what that sounds like. Roots do not recoil. Roots do not feel pain. Roots do not pull away like worms touched by a flame. But these did. The detached ends snapped back and fell into the ductwork. The metallic taste filled my mouth again, stronger than before. I coughed and spat into the trash can, but the taste stayed. After that, the rest of the repotting went smoothly. I placed the tree in the new pot, arranged the exposed roots over the stone, and filled everything in with the premium soil mix. When I was done, it looked beautiful. The pale roots over the stone looked like fingers gripping a cliff. The trunk had a gentle curve. The leaves were bright and full. For a day or two, everything seemed fine. Then, I noticed a root growing from one of the drainage holes in the new pot. It was heading toward the air vent again. I moved the pot farther away. The next morning, more roots had grown down the sides of the pot, all bending in the same direction. I trimmed them. By the next day, the tree had dropped leaves and looked less healthy. The green faded. Some of the small branches drooped. I felt guilty, like I had punished it for trying to meet its own needs. I told myself maybe it needed more airflow. Maybe the roots were seeking the ventilation mentioned on the card. Maybe I was being too strict. That became my mistake. I started ignoring little things. The den began to smell like soil. At first, I blamed the exposed roots and fresh bonsai mix. Then I started finding dust around the air vents in other rooms. The water bills spiked, but I assumed maybe there was a leak somewhere. I had also been hearing a tapping inside the walls, and when I called the landlord, he brushed it off. Old houses make noises, he said. Pipes expand. Animals get in the walls sometimes. He told me he would come by when he had time, which in landlord language means never. The smell in the den got stronger, but after a while, I stopped noticing it. A couple of days ago, I had people over for a housewarming party. It was the first time most of my friends had seen the new place, and I wanted everything to look nice. I cleaned more than I needed to. I hid the mess. I wiped down the kitchen counters, vacuumed the den, and even rotated the bonsai on the side table so the light hit it just right. It looked incredible. The trunk had thickened into an elegant curve. The exposed roots wrapped over the stone like pale fingers. The leaves were dense, glossy. and dark green. It looked old. Not old like a plant that had grown fast. Old like something that had been passed down through generations. People noticed it almost immediately. Emily leaned over it with a drink in her hand. "Wait," she said. "Is this the same tree from your pictures?" "Yeah," I said. "No, it isn't. It is. You planted this, what, 3 months ago?" Something like that. She looked at me like she thought I was lying. Then her expression changed into concern. "That's not normal from the kitchen. Someone said the den smelled like a greenhouse. Someone else said it smelled like pennies." I pretended not to hear that. I had not smelled anything strange in weeks, which now scares me more than if I had. Mark noticed the tree later. Mark was not a bad guy. He just got careless when he drank. Toward the end of the night, he crouched in front of the bonsai with a beer in his hand and stared at it with exaggerated seriousness. "This is fake," he said. I ignored him. "It looks fake," he said. Louder. "That means it's doing well," I said. "You bought a tiny plastic tree and invented a whole personality around it." He reached out and flicked one of the leaves. It was not hard. It was not even enough to damage anything. But I stepped toward him before I knew I was moving. "Don't." The room went quiet. Mark held up both hands and grinned. Sorry, didn't know you and Bonnie were serious." A few people laughed. I laughed too because I needed things to feel normal again. But inside I was angry, not embarrassed. Angry, protective, like he had touched a pet, like he had slapped a family member. Then he tipped his beer toward the pot and said, "Bonsai." A little beer spilled over the rim and darkened the soil. Everyone laughed. "Mark," I snapped. He looked from the pot to me. "Relax, it's a tree." I got paper towels and dabbed at the soil while people moved on. Someone changed the music. The room loosened again. The moment passed. At least, I thought it did. The rest of the night seemed normal. People drifted between the kitchen, the den, and the back patio. The weather was nice enough that I left the back door open for a while. I had a cooler outside by the steps because the fridge was full. At some point, Mark announced that he was going outside to grab another drink. He looked at the bonsai and said, "Want one? Babe? Be right back." He went through the kitchen and out the back door. He did not come back. Nobody noticed for a while. By midnight, the last few people were getting ready to leave. Emily was the first to ask where Mark was. "He probably left," I said. "His car is still here." We checked. His car was parked exactly where it had been, under the oak near the curb. His jacket was still hanging over one of my dining chairs. His keys were still in the little key box I had put out for guests so nobody would drive drunk. His phone was on the kitchen island, buzzing every few minutes with messages from the group chat we were all in. That sobered everyone up fast. We searched the yard with our phone flashlights. We checked behind the shed. We checked the side gate. We checked under the deck, even though there was no reason for him to be there. We checked stupid places, because that is what people do when they are scared and do not want to admit it yet. Someone said maybe he got picked up. Someone else said maybe he walked off drunk. But his phone, keys, and jacket were still inside. Eventually, someone called the police. They came, asked questions, looked around, and took notes. I told them Mark had gone outside for a beer and never returned. Since that was the last place anyone remembered him going, the search focused outward, away from the house. By the time everyone left, it was almost 5 in the morning. I stood in the kitchen after the last car pulled away. The house felt too quiet. The bonsai sat in the den where I had left it. The soil looked darker than before, darker even than when the beer had spilled onto it. I told myself I was exhausted. I told myself Mark had done something stupid and would turn up embarrassed. I went to bed. This morning, I found something growing out of my kitchen sink. At first, I thought it was a piece of spinach stuck in the drain. Then, I looked closer. 3 little shoots were coming up through the metal drain holes. Thin, pale stems with tiny green leaves at the ends. They leaned toward the window above the sink. I grabbed a fork and touched one. It bent away from the metal. I dropped the fork and jumped back. That was when I remembered the card. Do not allow root access beyond pot. I had thought it was about repotting. I had thought it meant roots could damage the plant or make it harder to handle. I had been wrong. I grabbed a bottle of drain cleaner from under the sink and poured it straight down the drain. The chemical smell burned my nose. The little green shoots disappeared under the liquid. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the pipes started banging. Not just under the sink. All around me. Inside the walls. Under the floor. Behind the cabinets. A violent metallic knocking moved through the house, deep and hard, like something huge was striking the pipes from the inside. The wall behind the sink shook. The counter trembled. Somewhere beneath me, something shifted with a low, dragging sound. Then, from the den, I heard leaves rustling. Not a few leaves. Hundreds, thousands, a dry, layered whisper, like the tree was shivering. Then, everything stopped. The house went quiet again. I stood there holding the empty bottle of drain cleaner, breathing through my mouth. I thought maybe I had fixed it. I poured boiling water after it, hoping to wash the chemicals through the pipes before they ruined anything else. Then I went to the den. The bonsai had changed. The training wire I had wrapped around the trunk was now buried halfway into the bark. The trunk had thickened around it in minutes. The bark bulged over each loop like swollen flesh around a ring. The leaves were wet-looking, glossy and full. Roots had spilled over the sides of the pot and reached the floor. One of them had already found the air vent again. Another stretched toward the kitchen. I stood in the doorway with the metal taste filling my mouth. I had not poisoned it. I had fed it. That was when I finally understood what I should have understood from the beginning. I needed to kill it. I had only gone into the basement a few times before, mostly to check the breaker box. The landlord had said the tools were down there, but I had never paid much attention to what was in the far corner. I grabbed a flashlight and went down. The familiar smell was stronger in the basement. Damp soil. Copper, rot, greenhouse air trapped underground. At first, I did not see any roots. I swept the flashlight over the walls, the concrete floor, the old shelves, the washer hookup, and the pile of garden tools. There was a weed whacker, garden shears, a shovel, and a machete with a dull black handle. I picked up the machete. When I stood, my flashlight caught something hanging from the ceiling beam, a pale strand. Then I saw another, and another. The ceiling was covered in roots. They had slithered along the support beams, followed pipes, wrapped around vents, and traced electrical lines. Some were thin as thread, others were thick as fingers. They crossed the basement in twisting patterns, disappearing into walls and coming out again somewhere else. The entire house had become a trellis. In the far corner, I noticed 2 thicker root tips hanging down. But they were not roots. They were shoelaces. A shoe hung from the ceiling, held by vines. I took one step closer. The shoe was attached to a leg. Mark was up there. The roots had lifted him to the ceiling and pinned him in place. Some roots simply supported his body. Others had grown shallowly into his skin, visible under the surface like pale veins. Larger roots weaved through the wall of his chest and disappeared into him. His arms hung loosely, but his fingers twitched from time to time. His eyes were open. Small tendrils hooked into the corners of his eyelids, holding them apart. Two thicker roots disappeared into his mouth. Smaller ones followed, threading between his teeth and down his throat. I prayed. He was dead. Then, his eyes moved toward me. His lips began to shift. Not because he wanted to speak. I could tell that immediately. The roots around his chest tightened and forced air from him. One broken word at a time. Eased, almost ready, I screamed and swung the machete. I tried to cut him down. I tried to cut the roots around his chest, his arms, his neck, but the roots recoiled before the blade could land properly. They pulled Mark tighter against the ceiling. His body made a terrible sound. A muffled cry pushed through him by things that were no longer letting him own his breath. Then, a thick root swept across the floor and knocked my legs out from under me. I hit the concrete hard. The machete almost flew from my hand. Roots dropped from the ceiling and wrapped around my arm, pulling me toward Mark. I hacked at them, screaming as they tightened. Every cut root leaked dark sap that smelled like blood and wet metal. Some splashed onto my face and neck. It burned like acid. The basement lights flickered. The HVAC roared to life. Air blasted through the vents above me, and the roots seemed to move faster with it. I cut myself free and scrambled to the stairs. The roots chased me. They scraped along the concrete behind me. They slapped against the walls. One wrapped around my ankle on the third step, but I kicked back and brought the machete down until it split. Sap sprayed across the wood. I ran up, slammed the basement door, and stumbled into the den. The bonsai was moving. The trunk twisted and thickened in front of my eyes. Branches writhed slowly, not like branches in wind, but like fingers stretching after sleep. Exposed roots poured over the sides of the pot and shot across the floor. Some went straight for the vents. Others climbed the walls. Thin, red roots spread toward the doors and windows. The tree itself was still small compared to what it had done to the house. That made it worse. The little trunk in the pot looked almost innocent, like a model of something much larger hidden inside the walls. Its exposed roots, once pale and beautiful, were now beet red. I ran for the front door. The knob would not turn. I looked down and saw thin red roots threaded through the doorframe. They had grown into the seams. Beneath the paint, they flexed and relaxed like veins under skin. I pulled harder. The door shifted maybe half an inch before the roots tightened and dragged it shut again. I ran to the back door. Same thing. The kitchen window was next. I got it open about 2 inches before roots shot out from the frame, grabbed the glass, and slammed it shut so hard it cracked. Red roots spread across the pane, weaving through the broken glass until there was no opening left. Then the tapping started. One tap inside the kitchen wall, one tap beneath the floor in the den, 2 or 3 taps above me in the ceiling. Back and forth, not random, never at the same time. One would tap, then another would answer. It sounded like they were communicating, or mapping the house, or testing which exits were still weak. I thought about the pot in the den. I thought about the stone and the roots I had displayed so carefully. I thought about all the hours I had spent shaping the little tree, wiring it, pruning it, turning it toward the light. Bonsai was supposed to be beauty through control, beauty through restraint. I had failed to keep it contained. It had found a bigger pot, the house, and I was inside it. The floor under me popped. The walls creaked. In the den, the leaves began to rustle again, louder this time. That is when I ran upstairs and locked myself in the office. Now I am here. The tapping at the window has not stopped. It is softer now, but closer. The chair under the door handle shifts every few minutes. Small roots have started to slide under the door. They are thin and red, feeling around the room like blind worms. One touched the leg of the desk a few minutes ago and curled around it, testing the wood. I cut it with the machete, and the piece on the floor kept twitching for almost a full minute. The smell is getting stronger. Soil, copper, wet, leaves. Something is moving inside the wall beside me. It sounds like fingers dragging through insulation. I do not know what the right choice is. I could try to break the window and climb out, but there is something on the other side of the glass now. I can see shapes moving out there. Branches where there should be none. Pale roots spread across the siding like veins. If I open the window, I do not know whether I will get out or invite it in faster. The other option is to run back to the den and destroy what is left in the pot. I do not know if that will kill it. Maybe the real body is already in the walls. Maybe the pot is just a mouth. Maybe cutting the trunk will only make it angry. But I have to try. The roots under the door are getting thicker. One of them just curled around the chair leg. I can hear the branches rustling downstairs. I can hear tapping from the window, the ceiling, the floor, and now from inside the door itself. The house is not just trapped. It is awake. If you read this, please listen to me. Do not order seeds from any site claiming to sell accelerated stock. Do not trust old websites with grainy pictures and perfect reviews. Do not open any box that arrives without a postmark. Do not touch the wooden container. Do not plant the warm seeds. Do not give it soil. Do not give it water. Do not give it a pot. Do not give it a home. Because once it has a home, it will make the home part of itself. And once it does that, it will start looking for something living to grow around. The tapping at the window just stopped. The roots under the door are pulling the chair away. I am going downstairs now. Story 2. Hey, she said. Do you smoke? I stepped back at once. I did not know her. I was only passing by. That was what I told myself anyway. I was only taking the long road home because I had been too restless to go back to my apartment. I had left town after dinner without a real plan, followed the empty road past the last row of houses, and ended up near the old footpath outside St. Ray's. People in town still called it the creek path, even though the creek had been dry for years. When I was younger, there had been water there. Or at least that was what the older people said. A narrow stream used to cut through the stones and mud, running past the rotten willow tree at the edge of the outskirts. Now there were only smooth pebbles, broken cobblestones, and a shallow bed of gray dirt where water once moved. The place was quiet at night, too quiet. There were no cars out there, no houses close enough for voices or music to carry, no lights except the moon, which laid a silver glow over the stones and the dead branches of the willow. The wind moved softly through the dry grass, and every sound felt too clear. My own footsteps, my breathing, the scrape of loose stones under my shoes. Then she spoke. "Hey," she said again, like I had not heard her the first time. "Do you smoke?" She was sitting on the low stone barrier at the edge of the path, where the ground dropped away beyond the old creek bed. At first, I thought she was just another person who had wandered too far from town, but there was something strange about how still she was. She sat with one leg crossed over the other, leaning back on her hands, a cigarette held between two fingers. Her hair was loose and dark in the moonlight. It spiraled and swayed with the wind, falling over her shoulder like it was reaching toward me. "I don't," I said. She tilted her neck a little, and her hair dropped farther across her face. "Want to give it a try?" She flicked the cigarette between her fingers and offered it my way. I stayed where I was. "I don't think I do, come on," she said. "I won't tell. Tell who exactly." Her smirk grew wider. She looked around the empty path, the dead creek, the rotten willow, and the dark fields beyond. "See," she said, "we've got no witnesses." "No witnesses, huh?" She exhaled, and the smoke came out slow. The night was cold enough that her breath and the smoke mixed together, forming pale outlines around her smile. For a second, it looked like another face had formed over hers, made of smoke and frost. "I still don't," I said. "Well then," she pulled both palms down and tapped the empty cobblestone beside her. I looked at the spot. She was sitting right on the barrier at the edge of the makeshift footpath. Beyond her, the ground sloped downward toward the dry creek bed, then farther off into the dark. I could hear the wind moving somewhere below, though there was nothing there but stones and weeds. "I didn't come here to sit with anyone," I said. "I didn't ask what you came here for. I don't even know you. I know. I was just passing by. I know that, too." Her voice was light, almost playful, but something about it made my skin tighten. It was not the tone itself. It was the way she said things, like she already knew how the conversation would go, like she had heard it before. She watched me for a moment and then asked, "Aren't you supposed to be afraid of me?" I frowned. "How so?" "I'm a random girl in the middle of nowhere, so why aren't you scared?" I gave a nervous laugh. "Why would I be afraid of you?" She leaned forward a little. "Just a little? No, not even because you're a guy and I'm a girl alone in the dark? That doesn't make sense." She narrowed her eyes, then smiled like she had caught me in a joke. "Aren't you a little misogynistic?" "I'm not." She snickered. "I'm kidding. Come over here." I hesitated. The road behind me was empty. The town was far enough away that its lights looked like a faint glow under the clouds. I could keep walking. I could leave her there with her cigarette and her strange questions. That would have been the smart thing to do. But there was something about her. Not beauty exactly, though she was beautiful in a tired kind of way. Not safety either, because nothing about that place felt safe. It was more like curiosity. Or maybe the simple fact that she had spoken to me as if she had been expecting me, and some part of me wanted to know why. She patted the cobblestone again. "Besides," she said, "you aren't much of a stranger." I looked at her. "You know me?" "I do. From where?" From here, I blinked. What? She pointed at the ground with a cigarette. You happen to be here, she said, on this very night, at this very place. I stood there in the wind, not knowing what to say. She turned her gaze toward the old creek bed. That old creek that was once a creek but is no longer a creek. That rotten willow tree. This edge of the outskirts of St. Erase. Well, as they call it. The moon lit the pebbles below us. And I don't believe in coincidences, she said. I do well anyway, she said, ignoring me. I think you have enough time to spare, no? She brushed her hand over the place beside her again. Just until midnight, she said. Just until I'm done with this box of puffs. I should have said no. I should have walked away. Instead, I breathed out and said, all right. I took the spot beside her. She straightened slightly when I sat down, as if pleased with herself. Then she looked ahead and said nothing. For a while, neither of us spoke. The night stretched around us. The willow creaked every now and then. Its rotten branches moved in the wind, black against the moonlit sky. The dry creek bed below looked like a scar across the earth. The cigarette in her hand glowed orange each time she took a drag. I waited for her to say something strange again. But she stayed quiet. Minutes passed. Then more. The silence between us became uncomfortable. Then peaceful. Then uncomfortable again. I thought about leaving several times, but each time I glanced at her, she seemed so calm that I stayed. She smoked one cigarette after another, pulling them from the box in her pocket. Slow, careful movements. She did not speak again until the moon was almost directly above us. By then, it had to be close to midnight. She crushed the last cigarette under her shoe and looked at me. Good night, she said. Thanks for the second guess, what? I'll see you tomorrow. Same spot, I stared at her. What makes you think I'll be here again tomorrow? She smiled. I'm never wrong, honey. I'm sure you will be. I won't, so, she said, as if I had agreed. Same time, whatever, no witnesses, she added. I locked eyes with her. For a second, her smile faded. There was something else in her face then. Something tired. Something that looked too old to belong to someone her age. Then she stood and brushed the underside of her jeans. She pulled another box of cigarettes from her pocket, tapped it against her palm, and began walking away down the path. The wind moved around her, and her hair lifted behind her like dark water. I won't be back tomorrow, I called. She kept walking. I won't be back, I said louder. Ever. She stopped just long enough to chuckle. Does the road home ask where you belong? Then she disappeared into the distance. I did not understand what she meant. I went home that night thinking about her more than I wanted to admit. I told myself she was strange. I told myself she was probably drunk or high or just bored and messing with me. I told myself not to go back to the creek path. And I meant it. I really did. But the next night, I was back. I did not remember deciding to go. That was the first thing that scared me, though not enough to turn around. I remembered leaving my apartment. I remembered locking the door. I remembered walking through town. But I did not remember choosing the road. I did not remember thinking about the old creek or the willow tree. It was as if my feet had carried me there while my mind looked somewhere else. When I realized where I was, I stopped. The rotten willow stood ahead. The dry creek bed waited below. and she was already sitting on the barrier. I could not see her face from where I stood. Her hair moved in the wind, hiding her profile. A cigarette burned between her fingers, the orange tip glowing in the dark. "Come," she said without turning. "Sit." I tried to resist. I told myself to turn around. I told myself to go home. I told myself I had no reason to sit beside a strange girl at the edge of a dead creek 2 nights in a row. But my legs moved anyway. I sat down beside her. She reached up and pulled a cigarette from her mouth. The wind shifted at the same time, carrying the smoke away from me. The burning tip hovered inches from her hair, close enough that I thought it might catch. But it never did. She stared out at the dark. "Do you like strawberries?" she asked. I blinked. "What?" "Strawberries. Do you like them?" "I don't." "What about toast?" "Maybe." "Maybe?" "They're all right," she tilted her head. "Don't you simply like or not like something?" "I don't really like toast specifically." She sighed. "But I don't really dislike it either," I added. She took another puff from her cigarette. "If I gave you one right now, would you want it?" "Why would you have toast right now?" "Why not?" "I wouldn't want soggy toast, no." She chuckled softly. "You're gullible, that was rhetorical." "No, it wasn't." She paused after that. I thought she would fall back into silence like she had the night before. I thought we would sit there until midnight while she smoked, and then she would say something strange and leave. Maybe that was what I wanted. A repeat, a pattern, something odd but harmless. Then she turned her head toward me. "Do you like kisses?" I went still. "I don't know," I said. "You don't know?" "I haven't gotten one yet. You haven't gotten one yet?" Stop repeating me. For the first time that night, she looked directly at me. She dropped the cigarette from her mouth. It fell to the stones below, almost burned down to nothing. Her jaw hung open slightly, like I had said something impossible. Then she smiled, not sweetly. Mischievously, "If I gave you one right now," she asked, "would you want it?" I looked away. Why would I want a kiss from a stranger? Kisses always come from strangers, silly. That makes no sense. It makes plenty. I stared at the dry creek bed. "No." "Come on," she said. "I won't tell no, you reek." I looked back as soon as I said it. She was frowning. For a moment, she looked almost hurt. Then she sat up straight again and looked down over the ledge. "All the ones I got were nothing but reeks," she said quietly. She tucked her hair behind one ear. "Aren't they all supposed to taste like that?" I almost opened my mouth and said something kind, something careful. But the words came out simpler than I meant them to. "No," I said. "They aren't," she smiled without looking at me. "How would you know?" I did not know what made me say it. Maybe pity. Maybe loneliness. Maybe the moon, or the wind, or the strange pull that had brought me back there in the first place. "All right," I said. "Just one." She turned so fast that her hair whipped across her cheek. "Wait," she said. "Realsies?" Before I could answer, she hopped closer along the barrier until her face was almost touching mine. I jerked back slightly, but she did not seem offended. Up close, I noticed something odd. She barely smelled like anything. Not smoke, not perfume, not sweat, nothing at all. It should have been impossible. She had been smoking all night, and the cigarette had been right between her lips moments earlier. But when she leaned close, there was no scent on her. It was like standing next to cold air. Maybe it was the wind. I do not know. Are you ready? She asked. She leaned closer. I'm not. I leaned away. I'll be your first kiss, she said. Wouldn't that be exciting? I would have wanted my first kiss to be yours too, I said. The words left my mouth before I understood them. She gave me a small grin. Too bad. I'm good, don't worry. Then she reached for the back of my neck. Both of her arms wrapped around me, stopping me from moving away. Her half-tied hair twisted around her shoulder and brushed my chin. She closed her eyes. I did too. Her skin was cold. Her breath was cold. Her lips were cold. But they were soft. So soft that I forgot where I was for a second. Then she pulled away slowly until we parted. She pressed her lips together and licked them softly. Don't get addicted, she whispered. Then she leaned in again. This time it happened so fast that I did not even realize I had been catching my breath. One hand grabbed my hair. My hand found her neck. She kissed me harder, and somewhere between the presses of her lips, she muttered something I almost did not hear. You taste better than nicotine. Then she broke away again. She hid behind the messy strands of hair that had fallen over her face and looked out into the distance. I looked too. Clouds had moved across the sky, forming shapes that seemed familiar in a way I could not name. The moonlight shone through them in broken patches, lighting the stones below us and leaving the rest in shadow. Then she said, I have a boyfriend. My palm stiffened against the stone. My leg lifted, ready to step down from the barrier. I was going to leave. I planned to end it all yesterday, she continued. I froze. My hands pressed harder against the cold cobblestone. She did not look at me. He smokes a lot, she said. And he brought me to it, too. But it was best that he did, I think. Because when he smokes, he's nice. Her voice became softer. And he's been nice lately. The wind moved her hair across her face again. But last week, he started drinking again. I don't know why. I think something happened at work. I couldn't really get anything out of him without getting slapped. My throat tightened. The last time he drank was 2 years ago, she said. I almost died. She smiled then, but there was nothing happy in it. I shouldn't have come back. I know that. But he was so sweet afterward. He promised he would never drink again. He stayed with me at the hospital. He said he loved me. Her voice broke. But she whimpered. I looked down at my hands because I did not know where else to look. Then you came, she said. I wanted to say something. Anything, but my mind was full of noise and empty of words. She gave a small laugh. No, don't think you saved me, I looked at her. She was staring down into the dry creek bed now. Her face had gone blank, but her eyes were wet. I still planned to look down, she said. I was just hoping. She stopped. The wind shifted. The willow creaked behind us. I was just hoping you'd come along. My breath stopped. My leg finally reached the cobblestone path, and I stood up. She did not stop me. Let's do it together, she said softly. I'll wait for you. I took one step away. I'll be here every night. I took another step. Then another. The whole time, I could hear her crying behind me. I did not look back. I walked faster. Then I ran. I ran until I could no longer hear her sobs, until the creek path was far behind me, until the lights of St. Therese appeared ahead, and the night felt like it had air in it again. At home, I locked my door and sat on the floor until morning. I told myself I would not go back. Again and again, I meant it. But the next night, I found myself walking that same road. I do not know when I decided to leave. I do not know why I did not stop myself. I remember sitting at home with every light on. I remember watching the clock. I remember telling myself that when midnight came, I would still be in my room. Then, somehow, I was outside. The town was behind me. The old road was under my feet. The wind was cold against my face. I walked to the edge of St. Irais, to the place where the creek had died, to the rotten willow tree by the cliff. The moon was bright above the stones, brighter than it had been before. The whole place looked washed in silver, but she was not there. There was only me and the cold breeze. At first I felt relief. Then I felt disappointment. Then fear. I stood by the stone barrier, looking at the empty place where she had sat. The wind moved across the dry creek bed and made a low sound like someone breathing below the ground. That was when I saw the note. It was folded and tucked into a split in the rotten willow trunk. I knew it was for me before I touched it. My hands shook as I opened it. The handwriting was uneven, but easy to read. Honey, he's smoking again. So I might not be able to go tonight. Or if I do, I might run late. Don't look down yet. Not until I'm with you. Just wait for me, and we'll get it right. But if by chance midnight has passed, and I'm not around, go ahead and take a peek. I read it once, then again, then a third time. The last line seemed to move on the paper, though I knew it did not. Go ahead and take a peek. I turned toward the stone barrier. Beyond it, the dry creek bed waited in the dark. It was not a deep cliff, not in the way mountains have cliffs, but the drop was steep and full of jagged stones. The kind of fall that would not look dramatic from far away. The kind that would just break a body quietly, where no witnesses could see. No witnesses. I remembered her smile when she said it. I stepped closer to the edge. The wind rose. The willow branches creaked above me. I looked up and noticed the moon. Something was wrong with it. A dark bite had appeared along one side. I stood there watching as the shadow slowly spread across its face. The light around me dimmed. The stones lost their silver shine. The dry creek bed below turned black. The moon was being swallowed. An eclipse. Without her. I should have left then. I should have run home and never taken that road again. I should have told someone. I should have called for help. I should have done anything except what I did. I sat down on the barrier. In her spot, the stone was cold beneath me. I held the note in both hands and waited. Midnight came. She did not. The moon darkened. The wind moved through the willows. Somewhere below, in the dead creek bed, a cigarette glowed orange for 1 second and then went out. I leaned forward, not far, just enough. Just enough to take a peek. At first, I saw only darkness. Then I saw her. She was standing at the bottom of the dry creek, looking up at me. Her hair hung around her face. Her body was bent at an angle that no living body should hold. One arm was twisted behind her, her head tilted too far to the side. But she was smiling. Beside her stood a man with a cigarette in his mouth. His face was hidden by shadow. Smoke curled around him, though there was no wind below. One of his hands rested on her shoulder. The other lifted slowly and pointed at the space beside her. She raised her hand, too. Her lips moved. I could not hear her voice, but I knew what she was saying. Come sit. The road behind me was silent. The town was too far away. There were no witnesses. I tried to stand, but my legs would not move. The note in my hand had changed. There were new words at the bottom now, written in the same uneven handwriting. I told you I'd wait. The moon went completely dark, and I just sat there, still waiting, just waiting. Story 3. It all started on a Tuesday. That was the day my life began to fall apart. Before that, everything was normal. Not perfect, not exciting, but normal in the way most adult lives are normal. I had a steady job, a girlfriend I loved, a car that mostly worked, and a quiet little house that I was still trying to make feel like home. I paid my bills, watched TV after work, cooked the same 3 meals over and over, and complained about the same small problems everyone complains about. Then, Wesley arrived. I still remember opening the front door that morning and seeing the box sitting on my doorstep. It was long, narrow, and made of thick brown cardboard. There were no shipping labels on it, no postage marks, no return address. Nothing that told me where it had come from or who had left it there. It was just sitting there in front of my door like it had been waiting for me. At first, I thought maybe it had been delivered to the wrong house. I looked up and down the street, expecting to see a delivery truck pulling away or a neighbor walking over to claim it. But the street was empty. The morning was quiet. The box was mine, or at least someone wanted me to think it was. I brought it inside and set it on the kitchen table. I had this uneasy feeling before I even opened it. I cannot explain why. It was just a box, but something about it felt too still, too deliberate. I cut through the tape with a kitchen knife and opened the flaps. Inside was a ventriloquist dummy. He was lying on his back, wrapped carefully in old tissue paper. His wooden face was perfectly smooth, almost polished, with cheeks that looked slightly too round and a painted smile that was just a little too wide. His skin was a pale brown wood tone, and his synthetic brown hair was combed neatly to one side. He wore a cyan and magenta-striped sweater, black jeans, and black boots. His hands rested on his chest like a little dead man waiting for a funeral. There was also a note placed on top of him. The handwriting was neat and dark, written in black ink on yellowed paper. This is Wesley. He is a ventriloquist dummy created to make your life easier. If you treat him with love and respect, then good fortune will follow you. If you don't, then may God have mercy on your soul. That was all it said. No signature, no explanation, no joke, no clue. I read the note 3 times, waiting for it to make sense. It did not. The whole thing felt like some kind of prank, though I had no idea who would go through so much trouble. None of my friends were into ventriloquist dummies. I did not collect antiques. I had never mentioned wanting anything like this. In fact, if anyone who knew me had been asked what kind of object would make me uncomfortable, a ventriloquist dummy would have been near the top of the list. I have always hated them. I know some people find them funny or charming. I never did. There is something wrong about their faces. Their eyes are too bright. Their smiles are too fixed. They are made to look alive, but they are not alive. And that makes them feel like they are hiding something. Even as a grown man, I could not look at one without feeling like it might turn its head when I looked away. So, of course, my first thought was to throw Wesley straight into the trash. But I did not. I wish I could say I had a good reason. I wish I could say I felt some warning in my gut and chose carefully. The truth is, I was just confused. The note made it feel like throwing him away might be the wrong move, even if the threat in it sounded ridiculous. Also, he looked expensive. Handmade, maybe, old, but well kept. Some strange part of me thought he might be worth money. So instead of throwing him away, I decided to put him somewhere out of sight until I could figure out what to do with him. At first, I thought about putting him in the basement. But my basement was damp, and I did not want him getting moldy if he really was valuable. So I carried the box upstairs and shoved it into the attic. The attic was hot, dusty, and cramped. I had to pull the ladder down from the ceiling hallway and climb up carefully with the box tucked under one arm. I placed Wesley in the corner beside some old Christmas decorations and a few boxes of childhood things my mother had given me when I moved out. Before closing the box, I looked down at him one last time. His painted eyes stared back up at me. "Nothing personal," I muttered. "You're just creepy." Then I shut the flaps, turned away, and climbed back down. The moment my foot touched the hallway floor, I heard a crash from above. It was so loud that I ducked instinctively. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring up at the attic door. Then I climbed back up. A shelf had fallen. Not a small shelf either. A heavy wooden shelf that had been mounted to the attic wall for years had ripped loose and collapsed across the floor. Boxes were scattered everywhere. Old photo albums had spilled open. A plastic container full of school awards, birthday cards, and childhood keepsakes had cracked down the middle. Some of my most valuable memories were spread across the dusty floor. I cursed under my breath and rushed over to pick them up. I was so focused on the mess that I did not pay attention to where I stepped. My foot went straight through a weak section of the attic floor. The wood cracked under me. My leg plunged down into the empty space between the attic and the ceiling below. For one terrifying second, I thought my whole body was going to fall through. I threw my arms out and grabbed the edge of a support beam, scraping my palms on the rough wood. "What the hell?" I shouted. My heart was hammering. My leg dangled through the hole, kicking at nothing. I slowly pulled myself back up, groaning as splinters scratched my shin. If I had fallen all the way through, I could have broken my neck. At the very least, I would have landed hard on the floor below. Once I was safe, I sat there breathing heavily, trying to calm down. That was when I noticed the box. Wesley's box had moved. I was sure of it. I had placed it facing the wall, tucked neatly in the corner. Now it was turned slightly toward me. The flaps were still shut, but the box had shifted enough that it looked as if someone had pulled it out a few inches and turned it. I stared at it. Then I laughed nervously. The shelf had fallen. The impact must have shaken the floor. The box probably moved because of that. That was all. I repeated that explanation in my head until it sounded true. I cleaned up what I could, climbed down from the attic, and decided I was done dealing with Wesley for the day. I did not know it yet, but that was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up late because my alarm never went off. My phone had charged all night, but it was somehow dead when I picked it up. I rushed to get ready for work, skipped breakfast, and drove 20 miles over the speed limit, only to get stuck behind a garbage truck for nearly 10 minutes. When I finally arrived, my manager was waiting near my desk. I knew from his face that something was wrong. He pulled me into his office and told me the company was restructuring. That was the word he used. Restructuring, like that made it sound less personal. Like losing my job was just moving furniture around. I was fired before lunch. By itself, that would have been bad enough. But that same afternoon, my car was towed from the parking lot outside the office because I had parked in a zone that had apparently changed that morning. The sign was new. I knew it was new because I had parked there many times before, and there had never been a problem. I spent the last of my emergency cash getting the car back. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, angry, and scared about money. My girlfriend Claire came over that night to comfort me. She brought takeout, sat with me on the couch, and told me we would figure it out. She was good like that. Kind, practical. She had a way of making bad things feel temporary. I remember her kissing my forehead before she left. "I'll call you when I get home," she said. She never did. An hour later, 2 police officers knocked on my door. Claire had been in a car accident on her way home from work. A truck had run a red light and hit her driver's side door. They said she died before the ambulance arrived. I do not remember much after that. The days that followed felt broken. People called me. My mother came over. Claire's family cried with me over the phone. I went through motions that did not feel real. I had lost my job, my girlfriend, and nearly all my money in the span of 2 days. And every night, I thought about Wesley sitting in the attic. At first, I hated myself for even making that connection. It was childish, superstitious. People lose jobs. Accidents happen. Cars get towed. Shelves fall. Floorboards break. Life can turn ugly without a cursed dummy being involved. But the thought stayed in my mind. The note had said good fortune would follow if I treated him with love and respect. If I did not, may God have mercy on my soul. I had put him in a box in the attic and called him creepy. The more I thought about it, the more afraid I became. 3 nights after Claire died, I woke up to a sound above me, a soft, dragging noise. It came from the attic. At first, I thought it was an animal, a squirrel maybe, something that had gotten into the roof. But then the sound stopped directly above my bedroom. Then came a soft tap. Tap, 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 like a wooden finger knocking gently on the ceiling. I lay in bed, staring upward, unable to move. The tapping continued for almost a minute. Then it stopped. I did not sleep after that. The next morning, I climbed into the attic. Wesley's box was open. The flaps were folded outward neatly, and Wesley was sitting upright inside, facing the attic entrance. His legs were stretched straight in front of him. His hands rested on his knees. His painted smile looked the same, but somehow it felt different now. Sharper, happier. I whispered, "No." The attic was silent. I wanted to throw him out. I wanted to grab him by the neck and smash him against the floor. But then I thought of Claire. I thought of my job. I thought of the hole in the floor and the shelf crashing down. Instead, I did the only thing that made sense to my frightened mind. I treated him with respect. I picked him up gently. I brushed dust from his sweater. I carried him downstairs and placed him in the living room armchair like he was an honored guest. I even found myself apologizing out loud. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling ridiculous and terrified at the same time. "I didn't mean to disrespect you." His glassy eyes stared ahead. I swallowed hard. I'll do better. Things changed after that. Not all at once, but quickly enough that I could not ignore it. 2 days later, I got a call from an old coworker who had moved to another company. He said they needed someone with my exact experience and asked if I could interview. I did. They hired me the next day. The pay was better than my old job. A week after that, the towing company refunded part of my money because of a mistake in their paperwork. Then my insurance helped cover some repairs I had been putting off. Then, at the grocery store, I ran into a woman named Melissa. We had gone to college together. We started talking, then texting, then seeing each other. I know how that sounds. Claire had not been gone long, and I hated myself for feeling anything for someone else. But grief does strange things, and loneliness is heavy. Melissa was kind, patient, and never pushed me. I told myself it was not replacing Claire, it was just life moving forward. And the whole time, Wesley sat in my living room. I dusted him every morning. I never put anything on top of him. I spoke politely when I passed. Morning, Wesley. Hope you're doing well, Wesley. Good night, Wesley. It became a routine. A strange routine, but a routine. And as long as I kept it, my life seemed to improve. I got a better job. I started dating again. I bought a new car, used but reliable. My bills were paid. My house felt warmer. For a while, I almost convinced myself the whole thing was just coincidence and that keeping Wesley downstairs was nothing more than a weird comfort habit. Then, I made the mistake of researching him. I had been sitting on the couch one night, watching Wesley from across the room. His head was turned slightly toward the television, though I was sure I had placed him facing straight ahead that morning. I stared at him for a long time, feeling that old unease crawling back into my stomach. I opened my laptop and typed a simple search. Ventriloquist dummy named Wesley. At first, I found normal results. Old dolls, auction listings, a few ventriloquist forums. But then I added his description. Smooth wooden skin, brown hair, cyan and magenta striped sweater, black jeans, black boots. That was when the articles appeared. The first one was from a small-town newspaper archive. It was about a man named Harold Bennett who had been hit by a bus while crossing the street in 1998. The article mentioned that he had recently purchased a ventriloquist dummy from an estate sale. In the photo attached to the article, behind Harold's smiling family, I could see Wesley sitting on a shelf. My mouth went dry. I clicked another result. A woman named Patricia Wells had died of cancer in 2003 after what her family described as a sudden and aggressive illness. In one interview, her sister mentioned Patricia had become obsessed with a ventriloquist dummy she called Wesley and believed it brought her luck. Another article described a house fire. Another mentioned a man who drowned in his own bathtub. Another told of a college student who jumped from a parking garage after writing pages and pages about the wooden boy who watches. I kept reading. Every owner was dead. Some deaths were accidents. Some were illness. Some were suicides. Some were violent. But they all had one thing in common. Wesley had belonged to them before they died. I found 11 previous owners. 11 people. And now I was the 12th. I slammed the laptop shut and looked across the room. Wesley sat in the armchair, smiling. For a long time, I did not move. The next morning, I tried to pretend I had not found anything. I went to work. I answered emails. I smiled when Melissa texted me. But my mind kept drifting back to the articles. The first owner had owned Wesley for 6 months. The second, 4. The longest had kept him for almost 2 years before dying in a fire. The shortest had died after only 13 days. I had already had him for almost a month. I started looking for ways to get rid of him. Not throw him away. Not destroy him. The note had made one thing very clear. Wesley had to be treated with love and respect. I had already seen what happened when I hid him away like garbage. I could not risk making him angry again. So I thought carefully. Selling him felt wrong. It felt greedy, like I was profiting from a curse. Throwing him in a dumpster felt worse. Burning him was out of the question. I did not know if that would even work, and I was not willing to find out. Then I thought of donation. There was a local charity shop about 15 minutes from my house. They accepted toys, antiques, furniture, and collectibles. If I donated Wesley, I would not be insulting him. I would be giving him a new place, a new owner, a respectful goodbye. At least, that was how I justified it. I also decided to include the note. The original note was still tucked in the kitchen drawer where I had left it. I read it again, and the words made my skin crawl. I folded it carefully and placed it in the front pocket of Wesley's sweater. Then I found another sheet of paper and wrote my own warning. I did not say everything. Who would believe it? But I wrote enough. His name is Wesley. Treat him with love and respect. Do not lock him away. Do not mock him. Do not destroy him. Please take the warning seriously. I folded that note too and placed it in his pocket with the first one. Then I dressed as if I were going to a funeral. I know that sounds strange, but that was what it felt like. I wore a clean shirt. I brushed Wesley's sweater free of lint. I combed his fake brown hair with a small plastic comb. I even polished his little black boots with a cloth. While I did it, I spoke softly. "You've been good to me," I said, though the words tasted wrong. "I appreciate everything, but I think it's time for you to move on." Wesley smiled. Of course he smiled. He always smiled. I placed him gently in the passenger seat of my car and fastened the seatbelt across him. As I drove to the charity shop, I kept glancing over. The sunlight moved across his face, making his painted eyes seem to shine. At a red light, I heard a faint wooden creak. I turned slowly. Wesley's head had shifted. He was looking at me. The light turned green, and the car behind me honked. I faced forward and kept driving. At the charity shop, a woman at the counter smiled when she saw him. "Oh, wow," she said. "He's unusual." "Yes," I replied. "He is. Are you sure you want to donate him?" I looked down at Wesley. His smile seemed wider than before. "Yes," I said. "Please take good care of him, we will." I almost told her to read the note in his pocket. I almost begged her not to sell him to anyone careless. But my throat tightened, and fear stopped me. I did not want to sound insane. I did not want her to refuse him. So I left. As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter for the first time in weeks. By the time I got home, the house felt different. Empty, but peaceful. Wesley's armchair was vacant. The air felt normal again. For the rest of the day, nothing bad happened. No shelves fell. No strange noises came from the attic. No tapping came from the ceiling. I slept better than I had in a long time. For a few months, life stayed calm. My new job went well. Melissa and I grew closer. I visited Claire's grave and cried without feeling like the world was ending all over again. I began to think I had escaped whatever Wesley was. I began to believe that maybe the curse only followed whoever owned him. And since I no longer did, I was free. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Melissa asked if I wanted to go shopping with her. We stopped by a few places downtown, including a small antique store she loved. I hated antique stores. Too many old things with unknown histories. Too many dolls, mirrors, and music boxes that looked like they had seen things. But Melissa was excited, so I went in with her. She wandered toward the jewelry cases while I stayed near the front. That was when I heard a woman laugh near the back of the store. Look at this creepy little guy, I turned before I could stop myself. A young couple stood beside a shelf of old toys. The woman was holding a ventriloquist dummy. Cyan and magenta striped sweater, black jeans, black boots, synthetic brown hair, smooth wooden skin. Wesley, my body went cold. I told myself it was impossible. I had donated him to a charity shop across town months earlier. Maybe someone had bought him and sold him again. Maybe that was all. But when the woman turned him slightly, I saw the corner of a folded yellow note sticking out of his sweater pocket. The original note. The woman laughed again. He's kind of cute, actually. Her boyfriend made the dummy wave at her. "Take me home," he said in a silly voice. My stomach twisted. I stepped forward. "Don't," they looked at me. The boyfriend frowned. "Excuse me?" "Don't buy him," I said. My voice sounded too serious, too desperate. "Please, just leave him here." The woman pulled Wesley closer to her chest. "Why?" I looked at the dummy. His painted eyes stared back at me. How could I explain it? How could I tell them that everyone who owned him died? How could I say that my girlfriend had been killed after I put him in the attic? That my life had improved when I apologized to him? That I had counted 11 dead owners and I was supposed to be number 12? I could not. So I only said, "He's not right." The boyfriend laughed. "Okay, man." Melissa came over then, confused and embarrassed. "Are you okay?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to grab Wesley and run. I wanted to smash him right there in the store and take whatever punishment came after. But Wesley's note flashed in my mind. Love and respect. If you don't, may God have mercy on your soul. I backed away. The couple bought him. I watched them leave with Wesley in a shopping bag, and I felt like I had just witnessed a murder before it happened. That night, I searched online for days, trying to find anything about them. I did not know their names, so there was not much I could do. I checked local accident reports, obituaries, and police updates like a madman. 3 weeks later, I found an article. A couple had died in a house fire 2 towns over. The fire started in the living room. The cause was unknown. The article did not mention a dummy, but I knew. After that, I stopped looking. Years have passed now, and I still do not know where Wesley came from. I do not know who made him, who sent him to me, or why he chose me. Maybe he moves from owner to owner by chance. Maybe someone sends him on purpose. Maybe Wesley finds people when they are weak enough to accept him. I only know this. For a short time, he made my life better. Then he showed me the price. I survived because I treated him carefully. I survived because I passed him on before he could claim me like he claimed the others. But surviving does not feel the same as escaping. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of soft tapping above my bedroom ceiling. Tap, tap, tap. I lie there in the dark, telling myself it is just the house settling, just pipes, just branches, just my mind remembering fear. But then I hear another sound, a faint wooden creak, like a small painted mouth slowly opening. And sometimes, from somewhere in the house where no one should be, I hear a soft little voice whisper my name. I have moved twice since Wesley. I never take old furniture with me. I never buy antiques. I never accept packages without a return address. But deep down, I know none of that really matters. Because Wesley does not need a key. He does not need permission. He only needs a door. And somewhere out there, someone else has probably found him by now. Maybe sitting on a thrift store shelf. Maybe waiting inside a box on a porch. Maybe tucked in the corner of an antique shop, smiling at anyone who walks too close. Maybe his next owner will laugh at the warning. Maybe they will call him creepy. Maybe they will throw him into an attic or basement and forget about him until their life begins to break apart piece by piece. I pray they do not. I pray whoever owns Wesley next treats him with love and respect. Because if they do not, then may God have mercy on their soul. Story 4. Rain hammered down on Black Pine Forest like the sky was trying to break the earth open. It fell in thick silver sheets, crashing through the branches and turning the narrow road into a river of mud. Lightning flashed above the trees, bright enough to show the forest for one sharp second at a time. Every time the light came, the pines looked closer than before, packed together like tall black figures watching the road. A rusted wooden sign hung crooked beside the entrance. Camp Bloodest. 1952, the word camp had been scratched so badly that it was almost impossible to read. Someone had dug deep lines through the letters with a knife, or maybe with claws. Under the original name, painted in dry, dark red letters, were 2 words. Don't stop. The paint had run down the wood in thin lines. It looked old, but not old enough. A battered pickup truck rolled slowly toward the camp entrance. Its headlights shook over the flooded road, catching broken tree limbs, old beer cans, and the black shapes of roots pushing through the mud. Behind the wheel sat a man who did not look like he belonged in a normal storm. His name was Ripper. That was not the name his mother had given him, but it was the only name most people knew now. He was 35 years old, a former Marine infantryman with scars across his jaw, his left eyebrow, and one side of his neck. His eyes were cold and flat, the eyes of a man who had seen too much and had decided long ago that fear was useless unless it kept you alive. One of his hands gripped the steering wheel. The other rested near the combat knife strapped to his belt. He stared through the windshield at the trees. Something in the darkness was staring back. He felt it before he saw anything. That old pressure behind the eyes. That crawling feeling at the back of the neck. He had felt it in war zones before ambushes. He had felt it in abandoned houses when the rooms were not as empty as they looked. And he had felt it once before in these woods, when he was a boy and the camp still had children laughing in the sun. The truck rolled under the campsite. The engine coughed. Then it died. Ripper did not move at first. He listened. The rain hit the roof of the truck. The trees creaked. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled over the hills. Then, from deep inside the camp, something metal clanged in the wind. He took a cigarette from the pack in his shirt pocket and lit it with a shaking flame. He took one long drag, opened the truck door, and stepped into the mud. The camp looked frozen in time. The old mess hall leaned to one side, its roof sagging under years of rain and rot. Cabins stood in crooked rows between the trees, their windows dark, their doors hanging open like broken mouths. A swing set moved in the wind, the chains whining as the seats bumped softly against each other. A banner still hung between two trees near the main path. Welcome, campers. Most of the letters had peeled away, and the cloth was green with mold. The rain made it flap slowly, like it was trying to wave him forward. Ripper looked at it without expression. Then a handheld radio crackled from his coat pocket. He pulled it out. Static hissed. Ripper, a man's voice said through the noise. You there? Ripper raised the radio to his mouth. Yeah. You sure about this? Ripper looked toward the cabins. No. The man on the other end was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Bodies started showing up again this week. I know, Sheriff said they were animal attacks. Ripper took the cigarette from his mouth and watched the smoke vanish in the rain. The sheriff is scared. The radio hissed. You think it's the same thing from '87? Ripper did not answer right away. A memory moved through him before he could stop it. Summer, campfires, wet shoes outside cabin doors, a girl screaming from the lake, counselors running with flashlights, blood on the dock, something pale crawling out from under the canoes. A small boy hiding under a bed while something dragged its nails along the cabin wall and whispered his name. He pressed the radio button again. It never left. The rain fell harder. Far away on the highway, a dented white van sped toward the camp, cutting through puddles and fog. Its headlights jumped with every pothole. Inside, music played too loud, and a camera light glowed in the face of a young man, grinning like he had never been afraid of anything in his life. His name was Trevor, and he was the host of a live stream channel called Nightcrawlers. He was loud, handsome in a careless way, and always hungry for the kind of danger that looked good on camera. Beside him sat Melissa, arms folded, her dark hair tied back, her expression already tired. She had come because Trevor had begged her, and because she did not believe in ghosts, curses, or internet legends. She believed in bad planning, cheap thrills, and idiots getting hurt for views. In the back sat Kyle, who treated every serious moment like a setup for a joke. He had a rubber mask in his bag, 2 fake blood capsules in his pocket, and the kind of grin that made people want to slap him. Jenna sat behind the camera. She was the quietest of the group, which made her the most useful. She checked batteries, watched the GPs, adjusted the sound, and noticed things the others missed. Trevor leaned toward the camera. What's up, Nightcrawlers? Tonight, we are doing what everyone told us not to do. We are spending the night at the real Camp Blood. Kyle leaned into frame from the back. The murder camp. Melissa rolled her eyes. You guys know 27 people died there, right? Trevor smirked. Exactly why we're going to hit 1 million views. Jenna frowned down at the phone mounted on the dashboard. Why does GPS keep cutting out? Trevor did not look away from the camera. Because we're in the middle of nowhere, Jenna, that's called atmosphere. No, she said. It keeps changing the route. First it says we're 5 minutes away, then 20. Then it says we already passed it. Kyle made a spooky voice. Maybe the camp doesn't want us to find it. Melissa looked out at the trees pressing close to the road. Maybe the camp has common sense. The van radio turned on by itself. It had been off. The speakers filled with static. Trevor stopped talking. Kyle leaned forward. Did you do that? No, Jenna said. A little girl's voice whispered through the speakers. Don't come here. The van went silent. Then the radio exploded with screaming. It was not music. It was not interference. It was the sound of dozens of people screaming at once, high and panicked and close, like they were trapped inside the speakers. Trevor jerked the wheel, and the van swerved toward the ditch. Melissa grabbed the dashboard. Jenna cried out. Kyle reached forward and yanked the radio plug free. The screaming stopped. The van rocked back onto the road. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then, Trevor forced a laugh that did not sound real. Okay, he said. That was weird. Melissa stared at him. Turn around, no way, Trevor. That was probably some signal thing. Some old emergency broadcast. This is great content. Jenna looked back down at the GPS. It says we're here. The fog thickened. It rolled over the road in low waves, swallowing the headlights. The trees leaned close on both sides. The road narrowed until it looked more like a service path than a public road. Then the headlights caught a man standing ahead of them. Trevor slammed the brakes. The van skidded in the mud and stopped a few feet from the figure. Ripper stood in the road, still, silent, covered in rain. For a second, nobody moved. Kyle whispered, "That dude is definitely a serial killer." Trevor swallowed, then lowered his window. Ripper walked over, slowly. Rain ran down his face and dripped from his beard. His flannel shirt was dark with water. And something else, too. Something Melissa noticed before the others. Blood, Ripper looked at each of them through the open window. His eyes stopped on the camera. "You need to turn around," he said. Trevor smiled because the camera was still recording, and he never missed a chance to perform. "Let me guess," he said. "Cursed woods?" Ripper did not blink. "You're already too late." Kyle gave a nervous laugh in the back. "Okay, Batman." Melissa leaned toward the window, her smile gone. "Are you hurt?" Ripper looked down at the blood on his shirt, then toward the trees. "No." Something growled in the forest. It was low and deep, so close that everyone in the van heard it over the rain. Jenna's hands tightened around the camera. "What was that?" she whispered. Ripper stepped back from the van. "Last chance," he said. Trevor hesitated. For 1 second, it looked like he might actually listen. Then his phone buzzed, with live stream comments flooding the screen. Viewers were joining fast. The numbers were climbing. He smiled again. "Let's go." Ripper watched the van roll past him and through the camp entrance. He stayed in the road for a moment, jaw tight. Then he followed. The group parked near the main lodge, and Trevor was out before the engine fully stopped. He lifted his phone and grinned into the live stream. "All right, chat, we are officially inside abandoned Camp Blood." Comments rushed up the screen. fake. This place is creepy. Go inside the cabins. Show the lake. That guy was paid actor. Kyle jumped out and spun in the rain. This is sick. Melissa stepped carefully into the mud, shining her flashlight across the camp. This place should have been torn down decades ago. Jenna filmed the cabins, the broken swings, the mess hall, and the trees. She did not say anything. She kept glancing at the darkness between the pines. Ripper appeared behind them. Kyle nearly jumped out of his skin. Dude, do you just appear places? Ripper ignored him. Stay together, he said. Trevor laughed. Are you our tour guide now? No, Ripper said. I'm the reason you might live 10 more minutes. Kyle snorted and walked toward a tree near the lodge. Something hung from one of the lower branches. Yo, he said. Look at this. He reached up and pulled down an old counselor's mask. It was made of cracked plastic, with a fake, cheerful face painted on it. The smile had been carved wider with a knife. Slasher cosplay, Kyle said, holding it up to his face. Ripper crossed the space between them in 2 seconds. He ripped the mask from Kyle's hand and threw it into the mud. Don't touch things here. Kyle raised both hands. Why? Ghost germs? Ripper stared down at the mask. Fresh blood dripped from inside it. Kyle's smile faded. Melissa saw it too. That wasn't there a second ago, no, Ripper said. It wasn't. They entered the main lodge because staying outside felt worse. The door groaned open, and the smell hit them immediately. Dust, mold, old wood, and something sour underneath. Their flashlights cut through the dark in long, shaky beams. Dust floated in the air like ash. Old camp photographs covered one wall. Children standing by the lake. Counselors in matching shirts. Canoes lined up on shore. Campfires. Talent shows. Smiling faces. Every face had been scratched out. Melissa stepped closer to one photograph. It showed a group of children standing beside the lake. Behind them, between the trees, was a tall, blurry figure. It was too far away to see clearly, but it did not look right. Its arms were too long. Its head leaned at an angle no living person would choose. Who's that? Melissa asked. No one, Ripper said too quickly. She looked at him. His voice had changed. The flat calm was gone for half a second. Fear had slipped through. Jenna lowered the camera toward the floor. Guys, she whispered. Deep claw marks had been gouged into the wooden boards. Not old little scratches from animals. Huge cuts. Long and wide, like something had dragged hooks through the wood. Trevor stepped over them, filming This Is Incredible. Ripper grabbed the camera with one hand. Turn it off, Trevor pulled it back. Relax, Rambo. This is why we came. No, Ripper said. This is why people die. Then he stopped. His head turned slightly. Be quiet, he whispered. Everyone froze. Above them, something moved. Slow dragging footsteps crossed the ceiling. Thump, dust drifted down. Kyle forced a laugh. Probably raccoons. Thump, thump, the sound stopped directly over them. Nobody breathed. Trevor slowly raised the camera. In the darkness above, between 2 broken ceiling boards, a face appeared upside down. Pale skin. Black eyes. Rotting lips pulled back into a jagged grin. Jenna screamed. The creature dropped. It landed on Trevor with a crash, knocking him to the floor. The camera flew from his hand and spun across the boards, still streaming. The creature's limbs bent backward like a spider's, elbows and knees folding the wrong way as it crouched over him. Trevor kicked and screamed. The thing lowered its face close to his neck and sniffed. Fresh meat, it whispered. Ripper moved before anyone else could think. He drew his combat knife and drove it into the creature's neck. Black blood burst across the floor and sprayed over Trevor's jacket. The creature shrieked, a high broken sound that hurt everyone's ears. It twisted away from the blade, scrambled up the wall with impossible speed, and vanished into the ceiling darkness. Trevor rolled away, gasping. Melissa grabbed Ripper's arm. What was that? Ripper pulled the knife free from the air and wiped black blood on his jeans. Local wildlife. Kyle stared at him. Local wildlife does not talk. Ripper went to a duffel bag he had dropped near the door. He unzipped it and pulled out a sawed-off shotgun. Kyle's face went pale. You knew these things were here? Ripper broke the shotgun open and loaded 2 shells. Barricade the doors outside. Something screamed in the woods. Then another answered. Then another. Jenna moved to the window and looked out. Her breath caught. Shapes moved between the trees. Dozens of them. Tall, thin, wrong. They stood just beyond the lights, swaying in the rain. Some crawled on all fours. Some clung to tree trunks. Some moved like people who had forgotten how bones worked. The camp loudspeaker crackled overhead. Everyone looked up. The speakers had not worked in decades. A child's voice whispered through the lodge. The last camper is back. Ripper went pale. Melissa looked at him. What does that mean? Ripper did not answer. The creatures attacked. Windows shattered inward all at once. Clawed arms reached through the broken glass, grabbing at anyone close. Trevor screamed and stumbled backward. Jenna swung the camera tripod like a bat. Melissa dragged a table in front of one window as claws tore through her jacket. Ripper fired the shotgun. The blast filled the room with thunder. One creature lost half its face and dropped out of sight. But a second later, it began crawling back through the window, its broken jaw hanging loose. Move. Ripper shouted. Kyle tried to help push a cabinet against the side door. Something broke through the window behind him and wrapped long fingers around his shoulders. He screamed. The creature yanked him backward through the broken frame. Ripper lunged and caught Kyle's arm. Kyle grabbed him with both hands, sobbing, "Don't let go. Don't let go." Ripper planted one boot against the wall and pulled. The muscles in his arms strained. The thing outside pulled harder. For 1 second, Kyle was stretched between them, half inside, half outside, rain and glass cutting his face. Then more hands reached from the darkness. Kyle's eyes widened. "No," he whispered. He was torn from Ripper's grip and vanished into the woods. The screams went on for several seconds. Then came the sound of bones breaking. Then silence. Melissa covered her mouth. "Oh, God," Ripper slammed the window shut and shoved a broken table against it. Deep claw marks had torn through his forearm. Blood ran down his hand. Melissa saw the wounds. Then she saw them close. Slowly, but clearly. The torn skin tightened. The blood stopped. The cuts sealed into pale scars right in front of her eyes. She backed away. "What are you?" Ripper quietly rolled down his sleeve and buttoned the cuff of his flannel. "The last camper," he said. Only 3 of the thrill seekers were still alive now. Trevor, Melissa, and Jenna. But Trevor was not moving much. He sat against the wall, shaking, his face splattered with black blood. His phone lay across the room, still streaming from the floor. The comments had gone insane. Fake. Call police. What was that? Kyle? Is this real? Jenna was crying silently behind the camera. Melissa was holding a broken chair leg like a weapon. The lodge shook as the creatures circled outside. Wood cracked. Nails scraped along the walls. Something crawled across the roof, dragging its belly over the shingles. We're going to die here, Jenna whispered. No, Ripper said. How do you know? Melissa asked. He looked toward the lake through the broken window. Because they're not hunting you. The room went still. Trevor lifted his head. What does that mean? Before Ripper could answer, a deep howl rolled across Camp Blood. It did not sound like the other creatures. It was deeper. Older, bigger, the creatures outside stopped moving all at once. No scratching, no growling, no footsteps. They became silent, like soldiers waiting for orders. Then every shape in the woods turned toward the lake. Ripper's face changed again. Real fear entered his eyes. No, he whispered. The lake began to bubble. At first, it was small, a few black rings spreading across the surface. Then the water started to churn, rising and falling as if something huge was moving underneath it. The rain struck the lake and vanished into the boiling dark. Jenna lifted the camera with trembling hands. The surface split. Something massive shifted under the water. Melissa stepped closer to Ripper. What is that? Ripper did not answer. His mind was no longer in the lodge. It had gone back to 1987. He was 7 years old again. The camp was full of children then. He remembered the smell of hot dogs, sunscreen, wet towels, and pine needles. He remembered his bunkmates daring each other to swim across the lake at night. He remembered the counselor telling them the old story. Before Camp Blood had a name, the lake had another one, Black Pine Lake. The locals said people drowned there even when they could swim. They said voices came from under the water at night. They said the lake did not have a bottom. The camp owners laughed at those stories because land was cheap and parents paid well for summer programs. Then, the disappearances started. A camper missing at dawn. A counselor found in pieces near the dock. Children waking up with muddy handprints on their windows. The camp closed for 1 year, then opened again because money always speaks louder than warnings. In 1987, Ripper had been there when the lake finally opened. He had hidden under a cabin bed with both hands over his mouth while the other children screamed. Something had moved outside. Something with many voices. It dragged claws along the cabin wall and whispered his real name. The name nobody at camp knew. He survived because he did not answer. At sunrise, everyone else was gone. Except him. The police found him covered in blood that was not his. After that, the wounds started healing too fast. He stopped getting sick. He stopped aging the way other people did. Something from the camp had gotten inside him, and he had spent the rest of his life trying to understand whether it was a curse, a gift, or a leash. Now it had called him back. The loudspeaker crackled one final time. Not the little girl this time. A distorted voice filled the camp, low and wet, like words spoken through lake water. Welcome home, Ripper. The lodge lights flickered, even though there had been no electricity for years. Trevor started laughing softly, not because anything was funny, because his mind had finally found a place to break. Melissa grabbed Ripper's arm. "You need to tell us what's happening." Ripper looked at her. For the first time, he looked tired. "These woods feed," he said. "They feed on fear, blood, and memory. Every person who dies here becomes part of it. The campers, the counselors, the animals, all of them. Those things outside used to be people." Jenna sobbed. "Kyle?" Ripper did not answer. He did not need to. The lake rose. A black shape pushed up through the water. At first, Melissa thought it was a tree trunk. Then it moved, unfolding slowly. It was not one body, but many. Arms, faces, ribs, hair, branches, mud, and bone, all twisted together into one towering thing. Water poured from it in sheets. Its head was not a head exactly. It was a cluster of pale faces pressed together, all with open mouths. In the middle of those faces was one that looked almost human. A little boy, 7 years old. Ripper stared at it. Melissa followed his gaze and understood. The thing in the lake had not only taken the children, it had kept a piece of him, too. The boy's mouth opened. Ripper's voice came out of it. "You came back." Ripper lifted the shotgun. "I came to end it." The thing laughed, and every creature in the forest laughed with it. The sound shook the lodge windows. "You belong to us," the lake thing said. "You always did." Ripper turned to Melissa and Jenna. "There's an old maintenance road behind the cabins. It leads to the highway. When I say run, you run. Do not look back. Do not answer anything that calls your name." Melissa shook her head. "What about you?" Ripper checked the shotgun, then pulled a flare from his belt. I stopped the show. Trevor suddenly stood, holding his phone. His face was pale and wet, but his eyes were bright with something desperate. "We have to keep streaming," he said. Melissa stared at him. "Are you serious?" "People are watching," he said. "If we die, someone needs to see." Ripper looked at him coldly. "No one watching can help you." Trevor looked down at the phone. The viewer count was higher than it had ever been, higher than anything he had dreamed. Then a comment appeared, repeated again and again by different accounts. "We see you, Trevor." A smile fell. From the darkness outside, Kyle's voice called softly. "Trevor?" Trevor froze. "No," Melissa whispered. Kyle's voice came again, wet and broken. "Trevor, help me." Trevor took one step toward the window. Ripper grabbed him and threw him back. "Do not answer." Trevor hit the floor, sobbing. The front doors burst open. Creatures poured in. Ripper fired once, then again. The shotgun blast threw two of them backward, but more came through the door and windows, crawling over tables, walls, and each other. Jenna screamed. Melissa swung the chair leg into a creature's jaw and felt the bone crack under the wood. "Run!" Ripper shouted. He threw the lit flare across the room into a trail of black blood. Fire exploded up the wall in bright orange lines. Melissa grabbed Jenna and pulled her toward the back hall. Trevor scrambled after them, slipping in the mud and blood on the floor. Behind them, Ripper stood between the creatures and the survivors, knife in one hand, empty shotgun in the other, face lit by fire. The creatures rushed him. He rushed them back. Melissa did not see what happened next. She ran. The back door led into the rain. The three of them stumbled behind the cabins, through weeds and mud, following the broken shape of an old road. Behind them, camp blood burned in pieces. Smoke rose through the rain. The lake thing howled and the trees shook. Voices called from the woods. Melissa, Jenna, Trevor. Some sounded like friends. Some sounded like family. Some sounded like children crying. "Don't answer," Melissa gasped. "Don't answer." Jenna kept crying but did not speak. Trevor ran behind them, holding his phone like it was the only thing keeping him real. Then he stopped. Melissa turned. "What are you doing?" Trevor stared into the trees. His face softened. "Mom?" Melissa's stomach dropped. "No, Trevor, don't," from the woods, a woman's voice said. "Baby, come here." Trevor smiled like a little boy. He stepped off the road. Melissa ran back and grabbed his sleeve, but he pulled free. "Trevor." The trees took him. His scream was short. Jenna tried to run faster, but she tripped in the mud. Melissa pulled her up. The maintenance road appeared ahead, barely visible through the rain. Beyond it, far away, she could see the weak glow of the highway. They were almost there. Behind them, something roared. The ground shook. Melissa looked back once, even though she knew she should not. The camp was burning, and in the middle of the fire stood Ripper. The creatures swarmed him, clawing and tearing, but he would not fall. The lake thing rose behind him, huge and black against the flames. Ripper looked small in front of it. Then he looked toward Melissa, as if he knew she was watching. He raised one hand. Not a goodbye, a warning. "Run." Melissa grabbed Jenna and ran harder. They reached the highway just as dawn began to stain the sky gray. A truck driver found them walking barefoot in the rain, covered in mud and shaking so badly they could barely speak. When the police arrived, they asked about the others. They asked about Trevor, Kyle, and the man named Ripper. Melissa told them everything. The officers did not believe her. Of course they did not. By the time search teams reached Camp Blood, the fire was out. The lodge was still standing. The cabins were quiet. There were no bodies, no black blood, no creatures, and no sign of Ripper. Only one thing had changed. The old wooden sign at the entrance no longer said Camp Blood. The scratched letters were gone. The red warning was gone, too. In their place, carved deep into the wood, were 3 fresh words. Welcome back, campers. That night, Melissa sat in a hospital bed with a blanket around her shoulders. Jenna slept in the next room. Doctors said they were dehydrated, in shock, and lucky to be alive. Melissa did not feel lucky. She kept hearing the rain. She kept hearing Kyle scream. She kept hearing Ripper say, "Do not answer." A nurse came in near midnight and told her to rest. Melissa nodded. When the nurse left, the small television in the corner turned on by itself. Static filled the screen. Melissa sat up. The static cleared. For 1 second, she saw the lake. Black water. Rain, trees. Then she saw Ripper standing on the dock. He was covered in blood and mud. His flannel hung in strips. His face was pale, but his eyes were open. Behind him, shapes moved between the trees. He looked directly into the camera. "Melissa," he said. Her breath stopped. The screen flickered. Ripper's voice became lower, distorted, mixed with other voices. "The last camper is not enough." The hospital room lights buzzed. A drop of black water fell from the ceiling onto Melissa's blanket. Then another. Then another. From the television speaker, a little girl began to sing. Ring Around the Rosie, Melissa pressed both hands over her ears. But it did not help. Because now, the song was not only coming from the TV. It was coming from the hallway. It was coming from under the bed. It was coming from inside the walls. A pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall. Someone knocked on the hospital room door. 3 slow knocks. Melissa stared at it. Shaking, a voice from the other side whispered her name. It sounded like Trevor. It sounded like Kyle. It sounded like Ripper. And then it sounded like someone she had never met. A little boy from a summer camp in 1987 asking to be let in from the rain. Melissa bit her tongue until she tasted blood. She did not answer. Outside the door, the voice smiled. She could hear it. Then it whispered, "Good," and the lights went out.